Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. Always a pleasure and a privilege for us to join together for these updates. They are important. The other day, I was uh, on social media and someone was posting some news items, and I said, "Boy, I'm really glad that we we only deal with these things, once a week." And that's even a little bit much. Some of these things get a little bit much to deal with, and I know many of you feel the same way. And so someone was commenting, "Well, we've got to be on top of this stuff." I'm like, "Yes, we do. We do. We need to be aware of what's going on, but at the same time, we have to be careful with that impulse to kind of have the latest on every single update." And speaking of updates, I want to remind you about remnantwatch.com. That's remnantwatch.com. And this is a website put together by the members of Remnant House, and it's a labor of love. You'll find no advertising on here, and it's basically just where we keep all the links for um, all of the stories that we cover. The only thing you'll find on there is a link to pick yourself up a restored names Bible. That's about the only thing we'll put on that site. And that's a very important resource for us so that we can, again, be informed. How do we like to say it, folks? Be informed without being overwhelmed. So it's very important that we do that. We want to be informed. We want to keep things from a biblical perspective. But one of the assignments that you can clearly see out there is an assignment of anxiety, which our enemy loves to bring upon the people. And so may the barakah of the Most High be upon all of your homes tonight. And on that note, let's get into the news. And peace and safety is the new theme going on out there, right? And in fact, many people aren't aware that Mr. Trump is pursuing a nuclear peace agreement with Iran. And he is talking about a permanent displacement of the Palestinians from the Palestinian area. We're going to get there in a second, but he wants to pursue a nuclear peace agreement with Iran. And he says, "I want Iran to be a great and successful country, but one that cannot have a nuclear weapon." Ah, there's the line. Okay. And President Donald Trump signaled on Wednesday that he will seek a verified nuclear peace agreement with Iran that will prevent the country from developing nuclear weapons while allowing it to grow and prosper. And so now they are essentially taking command of whether or not you can grow and prosper and how. So there's a whole lot of people that are suddenly waking up and realizing that there are definitely some issues in the new administration that so many people were jumping on board and so excited about. Well, they're starting to cool their excitement just a little bit. As a matter of fact, one of the things that really got many believers in Messiah and people who are astute to Bible prophecy, to scripture prophecy, suddenly jumped out of their skin when they heard this. Trump suggesting a permanent displacement of the Palestinians from Gaza. And again, doubling down on what I think is extreme deafness. But there's a cleverness to this whole thing. We'll talk about this here in a minute. So, for those of you that's now catching up, U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday suggested a permanent displacing of Palestinians from Gaza, saying people there had no alternative but to leave the Palestinian enclave devastated by Israel's military assault. Why it's important? Well, Trump, who was to meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday, first floated the suggestion of displacing Palestinians from Gaza on January 25th by urging Egypt and Jordan to take on more people. So what first sounded like just, hey, in order for these people to, have a little bit better life, you think maybe some of these guys could take some of these poor people, into their nations and shelter them. Then it moved to a much more hard line of, yeah, we're just going to get them out of there and we're going to change this whole thing. So it is really, really dicey what we're now seeing manifesting in the world as we're watching the plan unfold. And this is something that has been planned, folks. So now you know that they were all, he doesn't look surprised, right? So you now know that this was always part of the plan. And, by the way, while he's looking for a great deal with Iran, that doesn't mean that he's, foolish. So he says he's given advisors instructions for Iran to be obliterated if it assassinates him. So you're going to deal with me or you're going to deal with me. That's basically what this guy is doing. And Tuesday, he's given his advisors instructions to obliterate Iran if it assassinates him. If they do that, they will be obliterated, Trump said in an exchange with reporters while signing an executive order calling for the U.S. government to impose maximum pressure on Tehran. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. So here we are, folks. We have reached terminal velocity. We've reached the terminal hour, if you will. We now have a president who has gone full gangster. I'm telling you what, man. This guy came in with his sleeves rolled up in full gangster mode. Okay, full gangster mode. And in fact, some people are calling it. And I want to know what you guys think. So please, not in the chat, put it in the comments underneath the video if you're on YouTube or Facebook or Rumble. I really would love to hear your comments as believers, what your thoughts are on some of this, because I got to tell you, for a lot of folks, what they see is completing the genocide. Take a look at this. This headline, it's going to be hard to argue with this, right, guys? So this is why I would love your thoughts. I'd love your input. I'd love to know what your ideas on this are, because I think that there's a lot of moving parts here that make it very difficult to really navigate this situation. It makes it next to impossible, in my opinion, to navigate it, because there's so many moving parts and so many details that we're not aware of. However, this is crazy, when you think of it from a standpoint of biblical prophecy, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, there's no way you don't say, whoa, this is serious stuff, okay, for someone to be suggesting this. Analysts warn Trump's proposal is part of the larger strategy, and it's hard to argue against this since, again, this is literally he's hitting the ground with this strategy, which means it was already formulated at some point in the past, and there's only been a year and a half of the conflict. So when did you guys propose this plan? When did you know? When did you know it? When did you plan it? When did you know it? It's part of a larger strategy aligning with Israel's goals of ethnically cleansing Palestinians from Gaza and complete control over Palestinian territories. So U.S. President Donald Trump's controversial statements were about taking over Gaza, displacing over 2 million Palestinians, and transforming the region into the, quote, Riviera of the Middle East. Oh, this comment really, really did not play out well on the world scene, folks. I'd love your thoughts in the comments, again, in the video. I really think this is starting a firestorm. And so, as we've been saying, we've gone from the frying pan into the proverbial fire. Now, of course, cooler heads, are prevailing, right? So now you got Hegseth out here, the new defense chief. He's out and says U.S. is a very long way from possible deployment of troops to Gaza. Like, they start walking this back really quick. According to Pete Hegseth, taking such a decision would be preceded by robust discussions that he would have with the Secretary of Defense and the President, and so forth. So they're like starting to walk back this thinking process, because I think they realize that, boy, this guy really went out there and said something he should not have said. I mean, especially this early in the administration. And so this just caused a firestorm. Now, I personally think he is dumb like a fox, guys. Dumb like a fox. So while the Christians might, and I think, we're looking at this going, you are crazy, man. But is he? But is he? There's a clever strategy here that looks like it's manifesting. Um, and, I don't know. In the meantime, Hamas is not finding this very humorous at all. And they've canceled all hostage releases until further notice. Okay. So this just came out today. The terror group blamed Israel for violating the terms of the agreement. Hamas has announced it is suspending all Gaza hostage releases until further notice. The terrorist group blames Israel for violating the ceasefire agreement by delaying the return of displaced people and blocking aid and supplies from reaching the Gaza Strip. Well, if you want them all to leave, then you probably don't want there to be any comforts of any kind delivered into the area, or you'll encourage them to stay. And if what you're trying to do is to get them to sort of voluntarily leave, right? So they abandon. I really would love your thoughts on that. I'm sorry, but I find that indefensible behavior. Sorry. Can't defend that. Can never call that high ground. Can never call that something that you can be proud of or think is acceptable, in my opinion. Wow. And here's the latest shot to Saudi Arabia. Check this out, guys. This is really, really interesting. So the Jerusalem Post provided this wonderful headline. And I mean, to me, this is a serious, serious slap in the face. But remember, I told you, I think Trump is smart, is dumb like a fox. So I think he's stirring up a lot of support in the Middle East to counter this move, because I don't think he feels the same way about Netanyahu as some people think. Netanyahu says the Saudis can create a Palestinian state in Saudi Arabia. Let them do it there. The Saudis can create a Palestinian state in Saudi Arabia. They have a lot of land over there, he said. Right? And so this has been the perpetual statement, and there's certainly some validity to their comment. However, again, it's being done by force. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Saudi Arabia had enough land to provide the Palestinians with a state on a Channel 14 interview on Thursday. Saudis can create a Palestinian state in Saudi Arabia. They have a lot of land over there. When questioned about a Palestinian state as a condition of normalization, Netanyahu said, would not make an agreement that would endanger the state of Israel, especially not a Palestinian state. After October 7th, do you know what that is? There was a Palestinian state. It was called Gaza. Gaza, led by Hamas, was a Palestinian state. And look what we got. The biggest massacre since the Holocaust. Oh, boy, guys. Oh, boy. And then sanctions against the International Criminal Court that was trying to hold Netanyahu accountable for international war crimes. Anybody else catching what's going on here? We're going to put the kibosh now on that. We're going to not going to allow that to go forward. That strategy was cooling the heads of the opponents, if you want to think of it that way. In other words, that strategy, the hope, the possibility of hope that was provided through the notion that there would be some type of accounting or reckoning through the auspices of the International Criminal Court that now has been dashed and destroyed, will now change the mindset of the people in the situation to now begin to think that that's no longer a hope, that's no longer a possibility. They will now be considering other things they weren't considering before, but will be considering now, since diplomacy is failing. And there's a reason for this. There's a lot of energy, some might even call it spiritual energy, that is pushing these agendas. And so this is why believers all across the earth, you really need to share this video. We need to share this and get all of our brothers and sisters awake and aware to what is happening right now prophetically in the earth. These things are Bible prophecy coming to pass right in front of your eyes. Okay. And look at this statement being made from Israel. So when you see these kinds of headlines, folks, this is not a joke and this is not a drill. These are not lightly used words in Israel. And so if you think that this is a light matter, you are mistaken. Be aware, be awake, be aware to what is going on. Trump's Gaza plan is the final task, according to this article, for the Messiah. During his first term in office, President Trump was the steadfast ally of Israel, acknowledging Jerusalem as the eternal capital by moving the embassy, recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan, and instituting Pompeo doctrine, stating that the Jews living in Judea and Samaria did not violate international law. While many of his opponents tried to discount the Abraham Accords as a non-achievement, it stands as a foundation for peace and prosperity in the region. For what? For peace and safety. Okay? So you're going to continue to see the same effort to try desperately to make this work. And they're going to continue to push this effort, folks, because this is part of Bible prophecy and it must come to pass. Now, as a result of this, which if you think that this 5D chess playing man, Mr. 5D chess, did not see this reaction coming, well, I think you're naive. And so I think this is all playing out according to a plan. Now, look at this. Of course, we now know Politico was part of the U.S. aid outlets that were being paid by the government. Nevertheless, so we take all this with a grain of salt, right, guys? So just paying attention. But this is the headline that's out there. All right. Global fury builds over Trump's plan to turn Gaza into the Middle East Riviera. What a shock. Everybody say, oh, I'm so shocked that the Palestinians and everybody in the Arab world is upset. Who's surprised? U.S. president faces outrage from Arab countries and key European capitals over his dangerous proposals that Palestinians should be removed from the coastal enclave. Can you believe this, folks? This is what is now passing for normal, okay? And it's crazy when you really think about it. In Amman, Jordan, European countries joined Arab nations Wednesday in rebuking a shock announcement. This is a shock announcement, everybody, from by United States President Donald Trump that wants to take control over Gaza and forcibly displace. Did you hear that? Forcibly displace its inhabitants to neighboring countries, including Jordan and Egypt. Just force them by force. Now, this is the beautiful, wonderful thing about socialism and authoritative powers. They don't ask. They just eminent domain you right out of wherever they don't want you. Okay. And so this is a very dangerous moment in Earth's history. And I believe we went from the frying pan, and while everybody's cheering on certain things, we went from the frying pan to the fire, like we warned you guys we were doing. And look at Erdogan, who is the president of Turkey and a NATO member. He dismisses Trump's Gaza plan, saying it bluntly and plainly was not worthy of discussion. Oh, man. If you've ever heard fighting words, them's fighting words, okay? For the guy in Turkey to say, dude, your proposal is so stupid, it's not even worth talking about. Does anybody see trouble with USA and Turkey? Yeah. Here we go. I don't think Jordan was too happy either. You're volunteering their country for stuff. Check this out. Jordan's king also rejects Trump's takeover plan. So that didn't go so well. Look at that, right? Now we got ourselves a problem. And he's loved, by the way, guys. Jordan's king, they love him there. Absolutely love him. Like a family member. Love him. Jordan's king Abdallah said on Wednesday he rejected any attempts to annex land and displace Palestinians after a shock proposal by President Donald Trump that the U.S. take over Gaza, an issue that strikes a raw nerve in the kingdom, you think? And Trump said on Tuesday that was under his plan. Palestinians will be resettled elsewhere, and Gaza will be developed economically, an idea that elicited widespread international condemnation. We'll just put some condos. He turned right into their prejudice. He turned right into their, oh, that's all he does is build condos and air, and stuff like. He turned right into it. I think it's a brilliant strategy if it works. I think it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I think it also invoked a lot of angst when he opened the sanctions against the ICC, which I'll talk to you here in about a minute. But the Saudis, of course, are not on board with this whole nonsense. They're like, this is non-negotiable, man. So Turkey says not even worth talking about. Jordan says we're ready to throw down. Saudi Arabia says that's a no-go. That's a non-starter. Okay. Saudi Arabia flatly rejects Trump's Gaza takeover plan, establishing a Palestinian state. Look at this. See this, guys? Look at the brilliance of this. Is a firm, unwavering position. Well, glad you guys came to the table. You bring your checkbook? Good. Saudi's foreign minister says rejecting Trump's ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza. Ethnic cleansing. Saudi Arabia rejects. So nobody wants them. So write the check then, fellas. Write the check. That's basically what this entire thing was fundraising, guys. Look at this. Fundraising is what you're looking at right here. Okay. You're looking at them trying to pay for it. And the way they've decided to pay for it was just to irritate them so bad that they just have no choice. Now they're just like, no, we can't. Oh, we can't allow that. Why, we will not allow you. No, well, we just cannot. And if you push it, they're going to throw down, right? Okay, well, you kind of wonder, is he dumb or is he dumb like a fox, right? And so he ordered the asset freezes of the ICC. So this actually adds a lot of heat to the situation. This is forcing them. This is saying, nope, you're not going to solve this problem this way. You guys have to solve this problem on the ground. You got to build stuff. You got to do stuff. Okay, you got to take command. And why has Trump hit the International Criminal Court with sanctions? U.S. President orders of asset freezes and travel bans against International Criminal Court officials in protest against arrest warrant for Israel's Netanyahu. So he's come out strong in support of Israel's Netanyahu, who I think he's setting up. So I wouldn't be too excited like he's Netanyahu's new bud, because I think he knows exactly what Netanyahu is. I just watched the video where he calls him out pretty harshly. So I don't think he's fooled, but I think that there is 5D chess going on here, folks. Just a little bit more, a little bit more manipulation, because you can see headlines like this and it gets you mad, man. Next thing you know, people are upset. And let me tell you, anger is a good reason why people will motivate, will move. And so these headlines keep coming out, and more people are reacting, which again is important for him to get the reactions that he needs in order to get the movement that he needs. And he's clearly using these tactics, guys. As you watch this, you can see it. Look, he's now threatening. Check this out, guys. He's now told Mexico, this might have been a bargaining chip, actually, help us with these cartels, right? Trump moves a step closer to bombing Mexico in impossible war. Yes, U.S. president has reclassified cartels as terrorists as he seeks to stem the flow of lethal fentanyl. It's a risky strategy. I do agree. I think that's a very risky strategy. In 2019, 6 children and 3 women, all dual U.S.-Mexico citizens from a Mormon community, were massacred on a dirt road in the border state of Sonora, where gunmen ambushed their convoy. I remember that. We reported on that story. The brutality shocked President Trump, who was serving his first term in office, into calling for war in Mexico's cartels. He came close to designating them as terrorist organizations, only to decide against it after a personal appeal from Andres Lopez Obrador, who was the president of Mexico. And so now things have changed. And I do believe that this does not portend well for relations over the border. This is likely to get more difficult before it gets better. So buckle up, people that live in the southern part of the United States. You're going to have to deal with new challenges if this goes to a hot war, if this goes into a hot situation, and this does look like it. And also, there's changes that I don't know if we talked about this last week. We might have hit this, but this is now getting a lot more attention as several buyers. So I think this was all just stall tactic. Trump signing an order to establish a sovereign wealth fund that he says could buy TikTok. And I do believe that what he's trying to do, guys, with this sovereign wealth fund is combat Chinese government funding of enterprise. Because they are doing that, they give a leg up to new innovations that the United States really doesn't do. And so they want to redirect these monies that are going to weird political nonsense and redirect it into innovation, development, job creation. It just makes sense. If everybody gets out of the way and lets that part happen, that's going to make for a much better economy in the United States, without a doubt. But it presumes that people actually want to go to work. It presumes that people want to push away from their video games and from their comfy couches and their 5, 6, 7 inch foam, bathrooms or couches rather, and go to work. And unfortunately, what we're finding out is a lot of folks don't really seem to want to. That seems to be something not on their need to do list, if you will. And but this is starting to heat up. China is responding with tariffs on U.S. goods after Trump's tariffs on Chinese imports take effect, and China's newly imposed tariffs are up to 15% on various U.S. goods will take effect on February 10th. So that means that something that costs you $1 will now cost you $1.15. It's not the end of the world, but it makes a huge difference economically for the United States. And they're trying to make it so that it's so unpopular that, somehow there's some public pushback. It's not going to happen. China imposed tariffs on some U.S. imports Tuesday morning in response to new tariffs President Donald Trump placed on Chinese goods beginning shortly after midnight. Trump had signed an executive order authorizing a 10% additional tariff on imports from China, and the order also included a 25 additional percent tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico. So he is definitely cranking up the external revenue service. And remember, this is to replace or augment until they fully replace the internal revenue service, because these agencies, according to certain reports, have already been decommissioned. So this is all very interesting as we're watching the unpacking of a brand new economy and a brand new system. And if you thought this was going to be done all in one day, well, you're mistaken. They will let Babylon fall in one day when they have everything to replace it in place, right? So some of you are waiting for big things to happen. I really looked at our inauguration as a big, big deal. And boy, did we get pump faked, because as we looked at it, we realized, wow, they're not doing a whole lot, especially where we thought they would, until they get their people in place. And that's going to take a little bit. So now we've reset to watch the process that they're unfolding. But let's face it, folks, there is a plan. This is not just a normal takeover of a new administration. This is wholesale change of the way that not only the American people do business, but the whole world is being impacted by these changes. And speaking of changes going on, there's incredible images captured of U.S. Navy testing its new laser weapon. So I don't know if you know this, but now there's a resurgence of preparation for military conflict. The U.S. Navy has released stunning images showing its incredible new drone-destroying laser weapon. Well, they could have been deploying that one when we had all these drones we didn't know where they were from. The Helios system was tested aboard the USS Preble, with photos capturing its bright beam shooting an unmanned aerial vehicle out of the sky. All right. Helios, which stands for High Laser with Integrated Optical Dazzler and Surveillance, was developed by Lockheed Martin in 2021 and developed into the Navy a year later. And so they're rushing certain things to the market. There are certain things that they're rushing, especially medically, because otherwise they will go out of business. So don't think it's bad of benevolence that you're suddenly able to cure cancer. They've known how to do that for a while. And now all of a sudden you're going to see more and more cures and remedies and treatments coming out that have been available for a long, long time. And but I think that their business model is failing, so they got to turn into their skids, if you will. This is the reality. You're seeing the tariff thing starting to kick off. More and more people are using that. So now Ecuador decided to jump in, and they announced 20%, 27% tariffs on Mexican goods. Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa announced on Monday that his government will apply a 27% tariff on Mexican goods in an effort to promote fair treatment for his country's companies. So people are starting using tariffs to stop these trade imbalances. That's kind of interesting. In a post on X, Noboa said he favors more exchange of goods with other countries, including a potential free trade deal with Mexico, but not where there is abuse. Until there is such a deal, he added, a 20% duty will apply. And I think there's a lot of fair value with that. But yeah, they're using the name of another sun god, right? Yeah, that was great. A good catch, by the way, guys. But let's face it, they're starting to figure out that what's starting to happen here. Well, you see, a new ruach, a new time period has come in, a new epoch has come in that is requiring accountability and reconciliation. That doesn't always mean things are great. Doesn't mean reconciliation sometimes doesn't necessarily mean people are awesome. It means you check in the books. It means you're looking. It means you're double checking. Now, sometimes people say this, and this is the truth, and you got to reconcile it. Okay. And so that's what's going on right here is reconciliation unlike ever before. What a coincidence that we're seeing a ton of reconciliation going on in the natural after some things happen in the spirit. And so I think you're seeing a lot of these things. This is coming to light. This has probably been going on for a long time. And now Ecuador has had enough, and they're calling Mexico on account, saying, you guys have been abusing us, and here's the record, and we're now going to cause or put a tariff on it. What does that do? That's now settling the book or balancing this out or reconciling it. And so this is what you're going to keep seeing. You're going to see a lot of light where things are being reconciled and things are not being allowed that were allowed before, things that were permitted before, no longer permitted, things that were acceptable before, no longer acceptable, like letting people come in up and through a border that darn well they're not supposed to be doing. Darn well they're not supposed to be coming through there, and you ain't even going to help. You ain't even going to do nothing about that. What? Now we're going to put a tariff on you. Oh, now you want to help. Now you fitting to help. Now you fitting to help. You see, it's called the reconciliation. It's called accounting. Bring them to the table. Mexico agrees to deploy 10,000 troops to U.S. border in exchange for tariff pause. So this is how you do it. And this is what he's doing. He's using every power he has to bring some type of reconciliation, some type of balance, some type of equity back into these situations. I see this as a very powerful picture, and it's something that we need to continue to watch for. And I do believe that we're going to see more and more of this because the season has changed. Season of accountability or reckoning has arrived. And everybody gets a reckoning. Everybody. Nobody escapes the wind and the rain. Every house gets wind and rain. The difference is the houses built on the sand have a different fate than the house built on the rock. But they all get examination. That's part of the deal. And Ukraine is now getting examined. Trump's demanding rare earths as his payment. See, now he's doing some reconciling, going, hey, wait a minute, we're giving you all this and we're not getting anything for it. No. We want our help. You need to give us something in exchange. So what's this? This, again, is a reconciliation. U.S. reportedly briefly paused weapon shipments into Ukraine. Russian forces are continuing to gain ground as Ukraine struggles with manpower. And the reports coming out are very bad. They really need to stop this. Ukraine is getting absolutely decimated, and they are not being resupplied. And so they got basically set up by the previous administration and should have known that they needed to wrap this thing before he got in, because there wasn't going to be any help, and you're basically sending these people out to die. So this is a really, really sad situation in many ways. Getting back to the economic situation, the Postal Service has flip-flopped on Hong Kong China packages, lifting a ban it imposed earlier in the day. So a little shot across the bow, letting China know that they wouldn't be able to use the U.S. Postal Service. And I think that also was a little bit of brinksmanship, guys. This is sort of just to let you know we have this button. The U.S. Postal Service is reversing course on a day after placing a ban on all inbound packages from China and Hong Kong, which would have been absolutely devastating, folks. The post office had announced Tuesday it would no longer accept parcels from China and Hong Kong after the U.S. imposed an additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods and ended a customs exemption that allowed small value parcels to enter the U.S. without paying the tax. So they had given them this special exemption, right, guys? And of course, they were saying, no. You don't want to play ball here. You don't want to negotiate. You don't want to be like China, or you don't want to be like a Canada and Mexico. You don't want to give in a little bit. Okay, we'll take in the Panama Canal. We're taking that. We're going to kick you out of there, and we're going to slap some tariffs on you. You're going to come to the table. You're going to come to the table. And so he's putting maximum pressure on China. And China right now is trying to respond because it's a real affront. It's an insult to their, to their pride and all that. So it's not really a good thing. But at the same time, I see the strategy, and it's a dicey one, but a piece of bullets. So yeah. I mean, I know a lot of guys are, let's go just get them. Well, that doesn't really work. They want to continue commerce, right? Because after wars are over, look what they got to do. They got to go rebuild. It's not pretty. So, war's a waste of time. You can't figure out what a bomb solves, right? None of us can. And I don't know, maybe they got a bunch of AI workers. Hey, maybe they can send a bunch of robots in. Okay. I mean, who knows? Maybe we're going to see robots rebuild these busted up communities. Wouldn't that be a shock? Bill Gates seems to think so. Yeah, he's out telling the world that AI will replace humans for most things. How many think he's wrong? How many think that maybe this is a big plan that's going to make a lot of people unemployed? Okay, because they weren't prepared for a new digital world. And Bill Gates recently shared some interesting insights about the rapid progression of generative AI while appearing for an interview in The Tonight Show hosted by Jimmy Fallon. The Microsoft co-founder predicts AI will gradually take over more professions, eventually replacing humans in the workplace. Not that we really care much about what Bill Gates thinks, but I do think it's an interesting headline that they're now promoting. And so this is an interesting thing. I think that China is actually leading the way in many ways in the AI space. They jumped ahead with the release of some things. And so now, again, tit for tat, folks. Like we said, they're going to go back and forth. China's imposing retaliatory tariffs on $14 billion worth of goods. So we're going to keep seeing this tit for tat going back and forth. Speaking of things that are now changing, many of you are maybe thinking twice about wanting to get on an airplane. And I don't know that I could blame you for having a little concern about getting on an airplane. Lately, there's been a few of them falling out of the sky. So we all heard about the one, of course, that crashed in Washington, D.C., and the other one that had a crash in Philadelphia. And then at the end of last week's report, there was a Cessna with 10 passengers that was missing. And unfortunately, the update on that is that wreckage was found, and the Alaska plane that disappeared with 10 people aboard has been found with no survivors. So sadly, a very tragic end to that search effort. And it's a regional airline flight that disappeared in Alaska Thursday has been found, and all 10 people who were aboard are dead. And so sadly, we don't have a good update on that story. And that has been happening quite a bit. I think we've all noticed more and more stories regarding air travel. U.S. service members and 3 contractors killed in a surveillance mission plane crash in the Philippines. The aircraft was conducting a routine mission providing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance support at the request of our Philippine allies, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said. And so this is another tragic event that involved aircraft. And you guys remember an F-35 crash in Washington State, I believe, not very long ago. That was last week as well. So we've seen a lot of crashes in a short amount of time, and a lot of interesting sort of groundings or situations that have got us all concerned. I mean, take a look at this Jet 2 flight in an emergency landing after a windshield cracked. Well, I would definitely bring that plane down. I don't want a windshield cracking on an airplane, man. Flight tracking services reported that Jet 2 flight LS 633 was forced to divert to Manchester due to the issue having departed from East Midlands Airport while on the way to Tenerife, whatever that is. And so, interesting things happening with airlines and air travel, guys. And I don't know if it's intentional, but this is the most I've ever seen, definitely in terms of reported, in my adult life. I've never seen anything like it. So if that gives you any barometer, we've never seen this many stories in the news. Delta and Japan Airlines planes collide at Seattle Airport. This just happened again. Another airline issue. Japan Airlines sliced the tail of a Delta plane during a frightening collision on Seattle Airport on Wednesday morning. The taxiing Japan Airlines flight that arrived from Tokyo struck the tail of the parked Delta plane. So he ran into a parked plane that arrived from Tokyo, struck the tail at Seattle Tacoma Airport. So isn't that interesting, folks? They got drunk driving going on the airplane. I don't know what's going on there, man. I mean, how many times you got to drive by planes? I mean, pretty soon you're pretty sure you're supposed to know the spacing there, right? So this is very interesting. And again, more and more of these headlines. This is too many, guys. Way too many headlines regarding air travel. American Boeing 787 keeps diverting, has very bad 25 days. Something's wrong with the American Boeing 787. It's normal for planes to once in a while return to their origin due to maintenance issue, since airplanes are complex machines that sometimes malfunction. However, one of America's 8-year-old Boeing 787s with the registration code blah 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 seems to be having issues with a frequency that raises eyebrows. So now they're looking at all of these and going, uh-oh, some of these are coming back a little too often. Okay. And then if anybody is blowing a whistle on this stuff, they're not treated really well. You guys remember that we saw a couple of whistleblowers that were suddenly unalived. And here we got an airport worker accused of sharing a DCA plane crash video, gets arrested. 2 MWAA employees were arrested for allegedly leaking a video of the tragic midair collision near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. And the employees were charged with computer trespass for making an unauthorized copy of records. What? An unauthorized, they videotaped it. They just videotaped it. And that's an unauthorized copy of records. Are you seeing this, guys? I didn't know there was such a charge. Did you guys know there was such a rule as unauthorized copy of records, otherwise known as videotaping? You, sir, are guilty of making an unauthorized copy of records. You've got your video camera running. Never heard of that before. That one is a new one. Okay. And they're still investigating, and charges, of course, are possible. I think we've reached a new level here, folks. This is crazy. And speaking of a new level, I got the good stuff. I got the fresh eggs. Apparently, eggs are the new hot commodity, man. Check this out. 100,000 eggs were stolen from a supplier in Pennsylvania amid rising prices. They're straight up stealing eggs. Can you believe this? Yes, we have reached this place. Police say they are investigating the theft of 100,000 eggs from a Pennsylvania supplier. Egg prices have surged due to avian flu and increased holiday demand. The stolen eggs are estimated to be worth $40,000. So yeah, they stole them. Crazy town. We have reached crazy town. Do you think I'm done? Oh no. Egg shortages are now hitting restaurants, and there's no relief in sight. And so, oops, sorry guys. I don't know what's going on there. There we go. Pop that back on. There we go. There's no relief in sight. And look at this. I mean, it's starting to get ridiculously expensive for eggs. American restaurants are falling victim to a national egg shortage that has already plagued grocery stores from New York City to San Francisco and sent prices to $7 a carton. $7 for a dozen eggs. Starting to get Wild out there. And it's going to get wilder. It's going to get wilder. Look at this. More than 500 eggs stolen from a West Seattle cafe. Eggs. Eggs is the new thing. Hey, I got the good stuff. I got the eggs. Over 500 eggs were stolen from Luna Park Cafe on Wednesday morning. The thieves hit the West Seattle Cafe, located in 2900 block of Southwest Avalon Way. I love how they tell you all the stuff in the beginning of the article. Like, we need to know the address. Security footage shows two men entering the restaurant's refrigerator and stealing about 540 eggs and some bacon. Well, parasites be doing what parasites do. Wow. Okay. And now Waffle House is even jumping in. Waffle House is saying, "Oh no, y'all can't come up in here and eat up all our eggs. We can't afford it. We just can't afford it. Sorry." So now we're gonna have to add a 50-cent surcharge per egg. Absolutely, 50 cents. Not because of any flus, but because they keep stealing the egg. Y'all can blame it on that. I think it's because they're stealing the eggs. The Georgia-based Waffle House has added a 50-cent surcharge per egg to all its menu items due to the rising egg prices. And so we have an egg-citing situation out there. A lot of egg issues. Back when I grew up, eggs and toilet paper were so plentiful, we threw them at the houses of our enemies. So there's that. Really, really crazy. The time period that we've sort of landed in this time. And again, this is why it's important to be a little more self-sufficient in this time. And unfortunately, again, one of the things that we keep warning about, and on a serious note, want to encourage you to be very sober about your surroundings and your neighborhoods and your communities, because there's a reason why you had a ton of movies and videos that were depicting zombies and World War Z. As people become more and more enveloped in parasites, they behave like parasites. I'm starting to wonder, if you get taken over, do you become one? Ever notice the parasites don't eat each other, but they do eat their host? So they go after healthy. Interesting. And so we're starting to see some very wicked behavior, some very parasitic, wicked behavior going on in our society. And we continue to point these things out so that you who are set free, you who are walking in freedom, can perform deliverance. Remember that we are commanded, and these are the signs that follow them that believe, that we will cast out devils. Well, there's some that need to be cast out, because we need to catch these things before they make people do these wicked things. And in Sweden, we're seeing a shooting person. And of course, this was a horrible, horrible event. One day, and basically, this person is a school shooter, but they're trying to give this story about a background and all these different things that are happening in the person's life. And when you read these stories, I don't want to go through the whole thing. You can read it on Remnant Watch. But when you read this, you start hearing about basically the story weaved around. The guy didn't just wake up one day and just start shooting. There were opportunities for people to intervene. There's opportunities for people to perform deliverance. There's opportunities that people can get set free. Think about the Gadarene demoniac. What might he have done if he were loosed? What harm could he have done to people? But instead, Messiah went over. He got on the boat, went through wind and rain to get there. Remember that? Yep. And then when he gets to the other side, he cuts that man free. He casts the devil out of him, and the legion of demons leave him. Now, interestingly enough, that man asks to follow Messiah after that, but Messiah says no. He sends him back to his family. What you might not have noticed is that when Messiah returns to that same area, 4,000 men plus women and children came out to hear him. The same area that had kicked him out was now warmly receiving him. And so that was probably the most unsung evangelist in Bible history. And it happened because somebody intervened before he went even further crazy, right? And so we have to be the intervention. We don't run away from that. We run toward it so that we can do something to heal it. And unfortunately, some of these we're finding out did not get healing beforehand. And as I've warned you many times, people go into the work of the ministry and they use ministry as their therapy. And this is very, very bad because it creates a lot of victims. And so we need to be very careful here. And this story that just came out about Mike Bickle and IHOP in Kansas City is very discouraging. 17 women are part of this investigation. Mike Bickle, the founder of International House of Prayer in Kansas City, groomed and sexually abused 17 women, some of whom were minors, according to an independent investigation released tonight. And, there was a lot of back and forth, and a lot of people were defending him. But now the independent investigation has come out, and unfortunately, it is very, very critical of this particular minister. And so we're seeing this exposure and accountability or reconciliation. And again, everybody has to go through this. There are no exceptions. Everybody has to go through questions. So if you haven't gone through it yet, stand by. It's on its way to you. Everybody has to deal with it. And that's a good thing, because I believe we are seeing correction up and down from the top all the way to the bottom. And that's a very, very good thing in this moment. That's, again, part of reconciliation. Speaking of which, here's another situation we just saw where a Pigeon Forge pastor is charged with sexual battery and rape of a child, if you can believe this. I can't even believe some of these headlines, folks. And this 69-year-old Dwight Suttles was indicted by the County, Georgia on 5 counts of aggregated sexual battery and 1 count of rape of a child. So again, these things are being reconciled. This is a time of reckoning. And those that thought that they could hide out, well, they're finding out that that's not going to work. Now, this last story is a very dangerous story. And of all the stories that I've shared with you guys in several years, I want to warn you guys about this one, because this one's going to have the weight and strength of the federal government behind it. And we are warned about in Matthew chapter 10, I believe, and several places, the Messiah warns us about war in the end, of brother versus brother. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we see the war scroll warn about a war between the sons of darkness and the sons of light, which I believe Messiah is alluding to when he says that brother will deliver up brother to death, and the enemies of a man would be the members of his own household. So we have now entered a very dangerous time period where those who disagreed philosophically or spiritually or in any other area will now be turning up that to a new level of hatred and a new level of aggressive attack. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is an atmosphere that's essentially conducive to that. So while they're saying words of peace and safety, while they're saying words of peace and initiatives that have peace in them, they are actually stoking war. So their words are one thing, but their actions produce a different result. Just like saying we're going to seize Gaza, right? What reaction are they getting? Fury. So words of peace, hey, and everybody can live in peace. Those sound like words of peace, but they're actually words of war. You understand? They're doing the same thing. They're saying words of peace, but they know full well they are words of war that will cause people to go to war. Well, this last story is exactly that. It's one of the most dangerous things I've seen in a long time. Trump is to create a commission to combat. So pay attention to what this is essentially saying. This is putting federal government power, taking it away from other voices, and then applying it to another place to create a commission. Now, this sounds good, right? It always does. So pay attention. To protect religious liberty, combat anti-Christian bias. Anti-what? Anti-Christian. This is from the guy who appointed Paula White as the spiritual advisor. So once again, they can't help themselves. Like King James couldn't help himself, had to get into the spiritual part of the world. Well, these guys can't help themselves. President Donald Trump has announced that he will create a commission to protect religious liberty and to combat. Hear this? See this? See this word? What's that word? What does that word mean? Anybody want to tell me what that word means? Does anybody want to describe what combat looks like? Okay, so that's a war word. Okay, I'm glad we're clear. and what he called an anti-Christian or antichrist bias. So if you're against the Antichrist, you got a problem. I'll say again, if you're against the Antichrist, you've got a new problem. He's letting you know. Okay, you can't be Antichrist. If you're Antichrist, you're going to have problems. Right? They're not being funny here, guys. This is serious stuff. This is as serious as you get. Okay, this is about as mortal a threat as you can get in these last days, and that's what we've got. That's what we've got right now. We've got a mortal threat being sent our way, and so this is why I warn you to be sober and vigilant in this hour, not to take lightly the opportunities that you have to share the gospel, to share the good news, to encourage people to get water baptized in the name of Yahushua. These are all things that we're recovering because of our eyes being opened and things being made clear to us. We're seeing the real war. And when you see things like this, when you see your government getting involved in spiritual matters, okay, very, very dangerous stuff, guys. Very dangerous stuff. Because what it says is they're crossing that Rubicon. They're crossing that line where they want to come into your personal life on a very, very deep level. And this is beyond even medical intrusion. This is a different level of it. And so this is why it's important that we pray one for another, that we eliminate all strife from our midst. After all, it is zombies that bite and devour. We don't do that. And so we instead band together, unite in one accord, share resources, work together, knowing full well that we are in a very difficult time, and it's going to get more difficult, especially if you're trying to be set apart in these last days. And so our encouragement to everybody out there is to find your fold, find those who love and celebrate you. Don't ever be somebody's B team. Go find where you can be part of the A team. And you may find an eclectic group that becomes your group. Well, that's your fold. Find your fold. Find that group that accepts you. Find that pastor, that shepherd that Yahuwah is raising up in this hour. Is so important right now. This is why the alliance is so important. This is why we need to lay aside every weight and sin and argument and petty offense that has easily beset us so we can run this race because lives are at stake. Well, that's it for tonight. I pray this broadcast has been a berakah to you, and I'm thankful for every one of you that have joined us. Laila Tov to each and every one of you. Shalom.